Just before noon of the second day from Tharbad, the dike ended abruptly. Boromir stood and gazed across the river as he nibbled on the last of the carp he'd caught and cooked the previous day. He'd made camp in the shelter of the dike at the edge of the marsh and fried the fish in a little goose fat, wishing it were trout and then wishing it were smoked trout with a thick slice of freshly baked bread and a little wine. Now, the narrow, untrodden path led down to the natural riverbank and joined a wider track that swept in from the marshes before bending upriver. The fens gave way to small groves of brown trees and meadows of old, long grass and late flowers like toadflax and yarrow. The river here ran still and green, but was just as wide as before. Willow trees stood along the far bank, draping their branches in the high water, shading pools where fish gathered, no doubt. By mid-afternoon, the riverbank had lowered, and the road opened up into the approach to a weir. Boromir stopped and stared at the even stepping stones that sat atop it, spanning the river.
The elf spoke true,
said Finduilas. Either side of the ford was clogged up with tall, thick reed beds. The crossing had not been used for years. He turned and looked east along the remains of an ancient road until it disappeared in the haze.
This was the road that once led to Moria, part of the old dwarf road.
He looked at the green stones and not for the last time wished that Lostal was still with him. Around the approach was a grove of sycamore trees where crows sat, croaking like rowdy beggars. Boromir sat on a hummock of coarse grass by the road and took a gulp of murky river water, pretending that it was ale. Then he stripped down to his underclothes and stuffed as many of his clothes into his messenger bag as he could. He fashioned a makeshift sack from his cloak and bundled the rest inside with the frying pan and water bottle. After tying it up with the twine, he held the bundle close to his chest as though he were on his way to a laundry. Then out he stepped onto the first stone and stood for a moment, staring at the next. It seemed to be yards away and was definitely smoother and wetter than the first. None of the stepping stones were more than a few inches above the water. He leaned forward and somehow knew even before his bare foot had touched the stone that he would slip. He slid and danced on the slimy stone, hugging his bundled clothes to his chest. But then he was falling to the side. He growled with pain as he landed heavily on his hip, a muffled crunch of bone underneath his shield. The crows in the sycamores cackled as though mocking him as he sat upright on the edge of the stone and dipped his feet into the river. He let out a growling roar of frustration, then stared at the long, swaying weeds beneath the surface of the water. He pulled his shield around to his side and lifted the twine. The remaining coney was intact, but the hair was crushed.
At least it'll be tender,
said his mother. After tightening the twine around the top of the sack, he lowered himself off the stone, lifting the bundle above his head. The weir sloped away sharply into frigid water that took his breath. The riverbed was slimy with mud underfoot, but smooth and level. The weir's stonework was indeed dwarven, but there was an elven elegance to it. He imagined summers long gone, when perhaps the river was lower, and horses and wagons forded the river on their way from Lindon to Eregion. He trudged through the water, pressing his hip and thigh against the weir's face. The current, pushing him against it, was a strange comfort after the wild, unchecked power of the river at Tharbad. He was almost midstream when he looked upriver at the dark shape that was floating towards him. Another one of those large branches, draped in grey, muddy weeds. He wouldn't be able to advance without it hitting him, so he rested a while, leaning against one of the stepping stones. The cold seemed to grip him around the chest like a snow troll's hand, and his arms were starting to ache from holding up the bundled clothes. The branch snagged on one of the stones and he waded towards it. As he reached out for the thick splintered end, an arrow whipped past him and plunged into the water. Instinctively, he dropped his bundle and swung his shield round. He cursed as he watched his clothing spreading out on the water. His hose had become snagged on the branch, but he couldn't see his surcoat. Another arrow whipped over the top of his shield and he peeked around it, trying to find his attacker.
The elf seems to have lost her patience,
said Finduilas. Boromir looks for Faramir through the trees, but he is gone. He calls his name, listens and looks for movement. He is starting to panic a little when he hears his brother's voice echo through the wood.
I'm going back to the house. What is it, Faramir? Have you fallen again?
Silence. Then there's a splash behind him. Boromir twists around. Now he is standing on the terrace looking at Faramir. His brother is standing at the end of the jetty, gazing up at Mother. Finduilas, shoeless, her ivory gown flowing in the breeze. She caresses the back of Faramir's head before crouching gently, placing her hands on his shoulders. She hugs him, tears in her eyes. Faramir's chin and lower lip jut out and he bows his head. He too starts to weep.